Since they first launched their surprise attack against Urizen, the Druj have been pushing westward. Pell-mell they raced through Zenith, leaving devastation in their wake, extinguishing spire after spire, driving the highborn defenders before them. Once darkness had settled over northeastern Urizen, it seemed for a few moments that their thirst for blood might be quenched, but it was not. After a season to regroup, resupply, and reconnoitre, the Druj continued to pursue the 3 armies of Highguard, pouring down into eastern Morrow in an unstoppable flood, devouring everything in their path. The Highborn did their best, laid down their lives to staunch the flow of orcs, to protect the defenceless civilians, but it was barely enough. The halls of knowledge burned, the Temple of the Winds returned to ruin, the gardens of Morrow rent asunder, the heart of the Heliopticon broken. By the autumn equinox, the Druj were practically banging at the gates of Canterspire. Yet, at the same time, the armies of Dawn and Verushka were banging at the gates of Lamar in Ossium. The Druj advance began to slow. On the last night of the autumn equinox, as the Druj gather in their camps in Perigro and Cayley, the sky turns dark. Heavy black clouds sweep across the magically occluded skies, accompanied by cold winds blowing from the west that neither shake the trees, nor ripple the water, nor billow the curtains in the high windows of the remaining spires. Every mortal in Morrow awakens suddenly, 1 minute after midnight, and as the rains begin to fall, knows something has changed. The rain brings with it the touch of spring magic, and it might be possible to imagine that this is the only effect. The rain shimmers with life, quickly transferred to the streams and high, cool mountain lakes. It is something of a mixed blessing, of course. In a battle where anything short of death can be survived, it is so much easier to fall into the clutches of the Druj. A fate, in many ways, that can be worse than death. Shortly after that first rainfall, the Druj begin to move again. They come more cautiously than before, solidifying their presence in Opurus, manoeuvring carefully through the valleys towards Canterspire. They encounter little resistance. The highborn armies, savaged by months of battling the Druj advance, have been forced to withdraw westward to Astolat and to Cassinea. Worse, a grim sickness settles over the entire territory. First, animals become ill. Cattle provide no milk. Birds stop laying eggs. Next, the crops begin to rot in the fields. And finally, people begin to fall ill. The weak are the first to fall prey to the curse, the old, the young, those who have given in to despair. But at least the spring magic that courses through the water is sufficient to ensure that the injured, at least, are able to recover swiftly before the malediction can take hold. The magicians of Urizen quickly determined that Neve's twisting blight has been laid over the territory, and news from the south suggests it has been brought to bear in Spiral and Redoubt as well. One more burden for the people of Urizen to face. A little less than a month after the autumn equinox, the Druj army draws within sight of the citadel of Canterspire, forming up at one end of the valley. Observers in the high towers of the great library mark their approach, while below the last few defenders prepare for the battle that is to come. The Druj chant as they come, confident that nothing can stand against them. At the head of their column they drag a dozen captured sentinels, and once they draw within sight of the citadel, they begin to raise vicious wooden spikes. As the defenders of Canterspire watch in horror, the first sentinel is dragged forward. He does not scream, facing his death with poise, and at the last moment, With a visible sigh, he closes his eyes and collapses into dust. A ripple of uncertainty runs through the Druge. The second sentinel is seized, and the same thing happens. Between one breath and the next, the remaining prisoners each close their eyes and are gone. Dust and ash on the wind. Murmurs of uncertainty swell and roll across the Druge army. Their jeers and cheers fall silent, but only for a moment. Denied their sport, their thoughts quickly turn to overrunning Canterspire, sating their hunger for torment on the Urizen within. At this moment the Druge begin to pour down the valley towards the great spire. The first rays of the rising sun touch the highest point of the tallest tower. The ramparts glitter like a frost at dawn, like crystal. A rumbling bass note rings out like thunder, but instead of dying away, it continues becoming louder and louder. The shimmering light flows down the tower, quickening and spreading as it races down, coating the towers and walls, the libraries and auditoriums of Canterspire in a sheath of beautiful pale pink and gold crystal. It swirls and eddies in places, creating baroque curlicues and protrusions, somewhat reminiscent of a deep-sea coral. Within the span of a handful of minutes, the entire great citadel is a blazing tower of luminous crystal and glass. Clinging to the side of the crystal walls are a dozen great beasts, larger than oxen, roughly lizard-like in outline. They are composed of translucent prismatic crystals. They move effortlessly across the crystal walls on 8 massively taloned legs, snapping prehensile tails, tipped with vicious arrowhead spikes, opening wide crocodilian jaws to reveal row after row of razor-sharp welt silver teeth. Turning their great saurian heads left and right, they begin to sing out a warning. Terrible musical calls that rise and fall like waves on the shore. Light spills from them, illuminating whatever they turn their gaze upon, stripping away deception and obfuscation, banishing the early morning mist and leaving the Druge with nowhere to hide. At the same time, horns begin to blow. The gates of Canterspire, rather than being kept tight shut against the Druge, are flung wide open. Marching out from the courtyards and the halls of Canterspire come the Citadel Guard. Nearly 5,000 sentinels and battle mages of Urizen, accompanied by a cohort of elfin war witches. Spire and moon standards snap viciously in the early morning wind, alongside the crimson and gold banners of the Queen of the Fields of Glory. They are not alone. From the valley behind, surging around the sides of the crystalline Canterspire, march the armies of the Empire. To the east, the Iron Helms and the Northern Eagle, grim-faced Varushkans. Alongside them marches an entire third army of summer warriors, golden hawks and eagles, mingling with the flock of black carrion birds that hangs above them like a cloud. To the west, the Towerjacks and the Wolves of War, splendid soldiers of the League, reinforced by a contingent of Temeshwari mercenaries and deadly wagon raiders from Karov and Volodmarts, and supported by potent enchantments of day and autumn magics. The Druge charge falters. The leaders of the Eastern Orcs are quick to reappraise the situation, changing their orders as the two great forces move together in the rocky valley below Canterspire. As the two waves of soldiers break against one another, though, it is clear the Druge were expecting to face a defensive force, not a half-dozen Imperial armies on the offensive. Their tactics rely on outmanoeuvring and surrounding their enemy, and that is not what they have found. Yet, while the Empire may have the element of surprise, the Druge outnumber them. There are nearly half again as many orcs as humans fighting at the Battle of Canterspire, but the presence of the Knights of Eleonaris and the Crystal Guardians that protect the Citadel help to even the odds. The Empire fights conservatively. providing as few openings for the Druge as possible, withdrawing rather than risk losing soldiers to risky charges. Injured soldiers fall back to the crystal halls to be healed and to rest for a few moments before rejoining the fray. There are few chances taken here. The Druge strategy is savage, but not as much as it has been in previous seasons. They are more cautious, for the most part. Perhaps news of the attack in the north has undermined their confidence. Shortly after noon, as exhaustion begins to drape itself like a dusty cloak over both sides, it begins to rain. Not a heavy downpour, but a light, misty drizzle that focuses the refreshing power of the spring magic that provides a gentle blessing to all of Morrow. Both sides rally, regroup, and press their attack again. While it is refreshing, it is still rain. The dry river valley is quickly churned up into a field of treacherous mud that endangers human and orc alike. All it takes is a single misstep, and it is all over. As the sun begins to vanish behind the western peaks, a ragged cheer goes up from the Imperial side. A small force of sentinels have managed to skirt around the Druge force, using their high passes to manoeuvre themselves beyond the sight of the orcs and launch a daring rescue. 36 prisoners are freed from the Druge baggage train and escorted to the safety of Canterspire. The Crystal Guardians raise their heads in a triumphant chorus as the ragged band reaches the gate. 30 prisoners is nothing in the grand scheme of things, barely a fraction of the Imperial and Orc bodies that litter the muddy gorges around the citadel, but it is a powerful symbol, a promise of what is to come. Night falls, but not darkness. The crystal citadel begins to glow, as if its walls are infused with a pure sunlight. Beams of light focused by the crystal guardians sweep back and forth across the valley, illuminating the Druge as they attempt to fall back. The Saurian protectors continue their song of triumph as the orcs withdraw. Here and there across the battlefield, peculiar pale figures in dusty black armour move hither and yon, pausing for a moment to speak to the fallen. At first they are mistaken for healers, but it shortly becomes clear that they are the servants of the eternal Kayla, harvesting those close to death for the grim legion of their mistress. Thanks to the magic of spring, there are few enough on either side, and the Lady of the Silent Hosts gains a few new converts to her side. Over the next month, Imperial and Druge forces clash again and again in the cold mountains of Morrow, but not in the valley before Canterspire. Inch by inch, the orcs of the Malum are forced back out of Operus by Imperial armies. No quarter is asked for nor offered on either side. The spring benediction helps preserve life, but still the war claims over 1,000 human lives, and as many orcs fall as Imperials. The Canterspire remains a beacon in the heart of Morrow, offering sanctuary to any who can reach it. While the armies strike at the Druge, smaller groups of sentinels and magi move quickly among the high places that the Druge are unaware of. Accompanied by the brave heralds of Phaleron, they seek out citadels and spires behind enemy lines, helping to evacuate the people and their valuable libraries to the Crystal Sanctuary. While the Saurian protectors will not leave the castle, they possess supernatural senses that allow them to mark the approach of any enemy, no matter how stealthy, and raise a warning. The gates of Canterspire do not close again, remaining open. Another symbol, another promise. The Druge lose their foothold in Operus, and are harried in both Perigro and Cayley. As the winter solstice draws near, the Empire pushes into Cayley. Again and again, the Malum orcs are forced to fall back. The victory does not come without grief, however. The spire of the Arbiter's seat is liberated, but its halls are discovered to be empty of human life. The captured citizens facing torment and enslavement at the hands of the Druge, with no hope that the Empire would turn back the orcs, chose to accept Kayla's gift. The entire populace passed from life into death in a single night. The Druge left their ashes where they fell. The broken crater where the heart of the Heliopticon once stood is reclaimed. The devastation wrought by the defenders leaves no sign of what was once the grandest tower of the network. The burnt ruins of the Gardens of Morrow are liberated, but not a single plant remains. Yet, for all that loss, the Empire is winning. The Druge are in retreat across the territory. They are not broken, but for the first time since they invaded Zenith, they have not been victorious. Perhaps, just perhaps, this is the end of the Druge invasion of Urizen. Perhaps. Game information. Morrow. The Druge advance has been stalled and turned back. They've lost their fingerhold in Operus, and the Imperial armies have made significant gains in Cayley. With the assistance of the Eternal Phaleron, the Canterspire has been transformed into a potent magical citadel. Heralds of the Celestial Library accompany Urizen scouts throughout Morrow, helping to transport refugees to safety, along with the contents of their libraries. Any citizen of Morrow is free to roleplay that they have taken advantage of the safety offered by this combined effort. Morrow, Redoubt and Spiral have each been subjected to Neve's twisting blight. Even without the curse, the gains the Empire has made are still insufficient to allow the Urizen to directly support the Citadel Guard. But, for the moment, the aid of the Keeper of the Breadbasket is sufficient to reduce losses to the army from any lack of supply. The gift of Kayla, secured through a bargain with the Winter Archmage, allows any Imperial citizens in the hands of the Druge to engage in 30 seconds of appropriate role-playing, after which they experience a painless death. This ability extends across the entire Eastern Empire, the Malum, Zenith, and the Barons. No corpse remains. It is reduced to dust and ashes. This ability may be used by players captured by the Druge during an event. If you do so, you should ensure that you mark your character as dead as soon as you can so that your egregore is aware of your death. There is, however, one drawback to this, as Imperial magicians may soon discover. Anyone who takes advantage of this ability cannot be contacted with whispers through the Black Gate.